And do you think that Cher was strutting around in custom Bob Mackie gowns for her male audience's enjoyment? Hi, my name is Tessa, and I spend a lot of time on the internet, which means that anytime that there's discourse, I unfortunately know a little bit too much about it. Sabrina Carpenter is the latest celebrity to inspire dozens of online think pieces, with her recent antics on stage drawing criticism for catering to the male gaze and being inappropriate for her audience. But is there any truth to these claims, or are people just being killjoys?
You need to behave yourself.
Now, I'm sure most of you are at least vaguely aware of Sabrina Carpenter's existence, but to get the full context of this controversy, you're gonna need to know more. Sabrina's breakthrough came in 2014 after landing a role on the Boy Meets World spinoff, Girl Meets World, where she played Maya Hart, a sarcastic bad girl who was the best friend of the show's main character, which basically made her the Disney-fied version of Sam Puckett from iCarly. Airing on the Disney Channel, Girl Meets World brought her to the attention of a very specific demographic, children, and only 14 years old herself, she was essentially being marketed to her peers. Already having an impressive set of pipes on her, she eventually signed with Hollywood Records, and smack dab in the middle of her stint on Girl Meets World, she released her debut album, Eyes Wide Shut, which had a folksy pop sound that was popular at the time. We loved a banjo in the early 2010s. Because Hollywood Records is owned by Disney, they tend to work with people who are already affiliated with the Disney brand. And odds are, most of your favorite artists from when you were a kid, like Hilary Duff, Miley Cyrus, Selena Gomez, Demi Lovato, and the Jonas Brothers, were once signed to Hollywood Records. Is it all starting to make sense? With Disney being a family-friendly brand, they were pretty controlling of their artist's image and made a point about only promoting certain values that parents would approve of. Case in point, the weird purity ring era where everybody was saying that they were going to wait to have sex until marriage. Even their songs had to follow certain Disney brand guidelines, and if you listen to Sabrina's early albums, you'll notice that they deal exclusively with juvenile issues like friendship and crushes. Even after Girl Meets World ended in 2017, Sabrina continued working with Disney on Milo Murphy's Law, so she couldn't completely break out of the box that they had her in. But she did start to test its limits in 2018 with Singular Act 1, which had a bit more innuendo and sass than her prior releases. The album, as well as its sequel the following year, featured more adult topics like anxiety, breakups, and independence. And while the songs are by no means risque, you can definitely tell that she had grown up. I mean, she was 20 after all. Side note, if you liked My Everything by Ariana Grande, I'd recommend checking out Singular Act 2 because it has a similar pop R&B vibe. If you're around my age, then you definitely remember the pushback that Miley Cyrus got when she started to shed her Disney image. People complained about everything, her clothing, her music, her behavior, her boyfriends. Nothing she could do was going to make people happy. And in 2011, when she went on tour to promote Can't Be Tamed, she made a point of having no shows in the United States, saying that she didn't feel comfortable around that audience. Valid. Over the years, Sabrina Carpenter had slowly upped the sex factor in her visuals, wearing skimpier clothing and dancing more provocatively. But I'm guessing since she wasn't a billion-dollar brand like Hannah Montana, the backlash just wasn't as noticeable. In 2019, she left Hollywood Records, and in 2022, she released Emails I Can't Send under her new label, Island Records. I was already familiar with Sabrina Carpenter at this point because Sue Me is a bop, but I'd consider Emails I Can't Send her breakout record. Notably, it was also her first album with a parental advisory warning. We really aren't at Disney anymore, folks. This new label gave her a lot more freedom creatively, and her lyrics included more overt sexual references and profanity combined with her signature tongue-in-cheek humor. Two of the songs off this album, Nonsense and Feather, fully broke into the mainstream and became her biggest hits to date. And if the lyrics weren't enough to signal to her fan base that she'd grown up, the music videos also included more scandalous storylines and clothing choices to drive that point home. She had two notable controversies at the time. The first came with the release of Because I Liked a Boy, which was allegedly about the drama involving her and fellow Disney stars Joshua Bassett and Olivia Rodrigo. This love triangle had become a point of discussion following the release of Olivia's smash hit, Driver's License, with Sabrina being suspected as that blonde girl, which Because I Liked a Boy seemed to confirm. Sadly, a lot of people seem to miss the point of this song, and Sabrina continued to be labeled a slut and a homewrecker. The other issue stemmed from the music video for Feather, which had sequences filmed inside of a church. Now, she wouldn't be the first musician to be criticized for religious blasphemy, with Madonna's Like a Prayer being outright boycotted by the Vatican and banned on several TV stations when it was released in 1989. In comparison, Sabrina got off easy. In 2024, Sabrina's popularity skyrocketed thanks to Espresso and Please Please Please, which were two of the biggest hits of the year, and this momentum resulted in her sixth album, Short and Sweet, debuting at number 1. With all of this attention came a lot more criticism. A popular one being whether or not her performances were appropriate for her audience, which I think is total nonsense. First of all, if you have issues with what your kids are watching or listening to, that's something you need to manage yourself. I mean, Britney Spears said it best.
I mean, I can't help that, and if the parents don't like them to see it, then change the channel.
Secondly, Sabrina is 25. In what world would her intended fan base be children?
What happened with Girl Meets World?
It got canceled.
Yeah, and how did you feel about that? He wants to know.
It's been years, man. Move on.
It's also important to remember that Sabrina hasn't been a prominent member of the Disney Channel in nearly a decade, and most of the kids who grew up watching Girl Meets World definitely know what sex is at this point, even without Sabrina Carpenter referencing it on stage. I know parents don't want to hear that, but it's the truth. Besides, they're not her kids. She's not responsible for their behavior. I do wonder if some of this backlash is because society is generally moving in a more conservative direction. Just look at the US election. Only 10 years ago, we had songs like Peacock, Anaconda, and Side to Side playing on the radio, which are just as, if not more, raunchy than Sabrina's songs. People can say, by being overtly sexual, she's catering to the male gaze, but I think that's a fundamental misunderstanding of what she's doing.
I'm Sabrina Carpenter, and I know a thing or two about a great bang. In fact, I think we all deserve a better bang.
Sabrina is clearly playing a character, one that uses her sexuality and femininity as a punchline, but in no way is she making a mockery of those behaviors, unless you also think that Marilyn Monroe was calling every single blonde in the world an idiot. This theatricality is a direct homage to vaudeville and burlesque acts of the past, and you can see that inspiration in her outfits as well. You'll also notice that she often pulls references from old movies and variety shows. After all, she did get her start as an actress, and I'd compare her comedic stylings to Cher or Goldie Hawn. And do you think that Cher was strutting around in custom Bob Mackie gowns for her male audience's enjoyment?
Can I hear a little commotion for the dress?
The two events that sparked the most recent bout of claims that
Sabrina Carpenter is problematic
was her performance at the 2025 Brits and the Paris leg of her Short and Sweet tour. The Paris backlash was especially surprising to me because the French are stereotyped as being sexually liberated, not to mention that Sabrina does a position at every single show. If you bought a ticket, shouldn't you expect that? Now, I'm not British, obviously, but I have to suspect that they're more prudish than we Americans based purely on their treatment of Sabrina Carpenter. A few years back, a performance of Nonsense for BBC had its outro removed because it was deemed too lascivious, so it doesn't surprise me that seeing Sabrina in lingerie was just too much for them to handle. While I do agree that Sabrina showed more skin than the other performers that evening, I looked back at some past Brits performances, and she was by no means the first person to effectively wear underwear on stage. In fact, Little Mix had pretty comparable performances in regard to their clothing, sexual innuendo, and dancing. And let's not forget Jerry Halliwell's performance when she emerged on a pole surrounded by scantily clad men on a stage that was just a woman's legs. Although it's not quite a witch hunt, the hubbub surrounding Sabrina Carpenter reminds me of some other moral panics from the past, like when people thought that Dungeons & Dragons and Harry Potter were going to turn their kids into Satanists.
Warlocks are enemies of God.
Sex is an incredibly normal thing. In fact, there are millions of people doing it around the world right now. And acting like it's this taboo thing that should never be talked about is honestly what creates a more toxic culture around it. Trust me, a world where women feel comfortable not only talking about their sex lives, but joking about them is a step in the right direction. Regardless of how you feel about Sabrina Carpenter, you have to admit that whatever she's doing is working. And as they say, there's no such thing as bad publicity. I personally think that these performances are harmless fun, and it's honestly a really unique direction for a pop star in the 21st century. And if the people at Victoria's Secret know what they're doing, they'll book her for this year's fashion show, because I just know she'll kill it. What do you think about Sabrina Carpenter's sexy persona? That's it for this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye!